Have you ever wondered if you can draw pixels as triangles and not squares? This is a little experiment based on some inspiration I got from a Discord chat. In the Game Dev Field Guide of the podcast inside their Discord, there was a conversation that was spurred by LogsMacob about wondering if anyone knew of triangular pixel art. And it turned into a conversation where folks were creating grids and drawing colored triangles like pixels. And eventually, LogsMacob found a site that lets you do exactly that, where you can create a canvas, change the size of the map, update the orientation of the triangles, and draw away. Once you get in here, coloring each triangle as if it's a pixel. This tool lets you download like an SVG as like a static image, but this was basically what we're after. A little disclaimer here. This is definitely a vibe coding experimental project. I banged this out in a couple hours with the help of ChatGPT. I have never written a Lua script. I've never made an Aseprite extension. I have never even opened up Godot before. This is the first time I've ever opened the program up. So take everything here with a grain of salt and use this as inspiration. I share the files at the end if you want to use those, but just be wary that they are not production ready, and I have done very little code reviewing. So I had this idea of what if we did this in Aseprite. So let's draw a new sprite canvas. We can change the pixel ratio to double wide. You can see that each pixel now is 2 by 1. And we're going to draw a little cube using Aseprite with rectangular pixels. The goal here is that each of these pixels can correspond to one of those triangles in the grid that we saw on the other canvas. So I created an Aseprite plugin to render these pixels as the triangles that you saw in that last canvas editor. And you can see live as I update it, those are being converted to triangles. This format really lends itself to 3D depth. So really quickly we can draw like a nice looking cube. And the best part is that if we export this as an image, I added a tool to convert this pixel art sprite into an SVG, just like that other tool. So over here, if we browse and select that image we just created, you can see that we can generate it. Here, the orientation's wrong, so we can change it to columns, and bam, there's our little cube. And when you download the SVG, you can totally tell when you zoom in, because it's a vector image, it's infinitely resizable. And with that little tiny sprite, we have really nice looking isometric drawings. We can also animate this. So here's a cube that jumps up and down, and the preview window works with the animations. It kind of replaces that other preview window. If you hit play, you'll see this little cube bouncing up and down. What goes from a pixely, jaggedy looking guy to a nice looking cube. We can go ahead and export this as a GIF or GIF, whatever. And when we export this as that image, we can import it into the same tool. Here we select it. We're gonna have the same problem when I generate it. Rotate those triangles, generate that again, and here we go, a nice looking SVG. What this is generating is an SVG using CSS Markdown to cycle through a bunch of different SVGs. This by itself doesn't work with any game engine, so what I did to this tool is I added a HTML comment to the file. This go.try prefix tells a GD script to look in here for polygon rendering coordinates. So if we open up in Godot and add a new 2D node and update the script to this custom triangulizer script I generated, we can import one of these SVGs and bam. It's worth noting that Godot has native SVG support already, but not for animated SVGs. So this pipeline, this script, also supports adding the animated SVG that we generated from the other file. So if we open up the animated SVG, we can see here, just copy pasting, in the preview you can see that little animated SVG, just like what it was in the browser, but it's actually using that embedded JSON config for the polygon rendering. That's what the script is actually rendering. I also added some parameters to tint or change the opacity of these things, change the playback, ping pong the animation, those kinds of things. And all the transformations for the 2D nodes also work, like scaling and rotating. So once you got all these tweaked, we can change the colors around for like pixel palette swapping and render this up in the scene renderer. And look at that, we've got some nice looking vector art cubes. If you have any interest in playing around with this stuff, it's totally experimental. There's a GitHub repo I'll add to the description of the video where you can pick up the various files for the Aseprite script, the single page SVG generator, and the Godot script. Enjoy!